There was 190 in the budget, and then a $10 million appropriation was given at the end of the year to bring them up to about $200 million. And the universities had asked that this practice stop and that the amount that's budgeted for annually be fixed, and that way they can plan better and use the funds in a more efficient manner, use it in the best way possible, rather than scrambling at the end of the year, which is something that throughout government, I must say, and this is perhaps my accountant's hat coming on, but it's a very bad practice to have a lot of mad spending at the end of a fiscal year when you haven't had a chance to properly plan and program that spending. And we see it in every department, and we see it in a lot of big organizations where end of the year trying to spend your budget or extra surpluses being distributed means really really poor spending patterns. So the universities asked that stop, and it was supposed to be enshrined in the MOU that would be the case, and I wonder if the minister could refer to that practice. Thank you.
The Honourable Member Minister for Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the member. The Memorandum of Understanding with the universities is a signed agreement, and it is the amounts of money that are to be allocated are identified, and each year we have made a commitment to that. The practice that you're talking about, it should not interfere with their planning, because they are well aware of the allocation that they're going to receive. What happens is it's almost like an advance on their next year's funding that they get. So it does not take away from the allocation that they would be expecting, and it does not take away from their ability to plan and budget within that. It simply means that they get that advance from their next year's at that time.
Order. Time for the member has expired. The chair will now recognize the member for Pictou East or Halifax Needham. Clary, were you starting? Sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. A very good friend, Robert Chisholm, who is very well known to this House, was in the antechamber and wanted to speak to me for a moment, so I do apologize. I have a series of questions, Mr. Chair, and I understand I have to share the time with a number of others. So I hope the Minister will, in fact, give me an ear on a few of these questions outside of this chamber. First, I would like to compliment the department, compliment the Minister for some of the pilot projects that are, in fact, taking place in Nova Scotia at this time. And one in particular, I understand, is the first east of the eastern townships, and that is a computer per student in the classroom. And this has been done in my constituency of Pictou East. It has been done at a grade 4 level. And it's my understanding that in jurisdictions where this has been done for a considerable period of time, like in Chicago, there has been a tremendous increase in literacy and numeracy. And I'm asking the Minister whether there are intentions of expanding this one laptop. It's one laptop per student. And I believe the results on the initial trial have been great.
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to member opposite, one of my responsibilities prior to my retirement was in the area of technology, and so I have a keen interest in that, and I recognize the value that adds to instruction and learning. We have embarked as a department on a pilot, and As with all pilots, there is a monitoring and an evaluation component, and that is underway for that particular pilot. And we are into the second year of that pilot, so the monitoring and outcomes and comments from both parents, teachers, and students will form a part of that assessment of that pilot. So it is a beginning, but in an age of technology in which we all live, and our students are more familiar with calculators and computers at age 5 than most of us are now, I don't think we can do anything but continue to move forward in that.
The Honourable Member for Pictou East.
Mr. Chair, I should also, on that particular question, congratulate the Chignecto Central Board for being the willing recipient of that new technology as well. The role of teacher assistants is vital to our education system. And where there are multiple students in a classroom needing teacher assistance, is the department developing some kind of a ratio or formula in respect to this matter? Because there are a number of classrooms that do in fact have multiple needs with only one teacher assistant.
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member opposite, teacher assistants are just another example of supports that we provide for our students and indeed for our teachers in the classroom. And at the school level and at the board level, there's an ongoing assessment of student needs and what we need to do as a board or as a department to provide supports. One of the ways of doing that is through teacher assistants. And we do provide the funding to boards to provide that service. And you're very correct, there may be more than one student within a classroom who does need the supports. If those supports can be provided by one additional body in the room, then that would be done. But if they cannot be, then we have no objection to, and we know we do have classrooms where there's more than one TA in the classroom at all times.
The Honourable Member for Pictou East.
Mr. Chair, to the Minister, I would like to ask the Minister what is being done to encourage sort of the VOTEC or the Occupation and Opportunities, or O2 as it's called. What is being done to expand this very important aspect of education? It's an area where some students get hands-on experience in important mechanical and technical life functions. And this doesn't infringe in any way on the Nova Scotia Community College system. In fact, it assists rather than crossing over into the NSCC roles. So I'm wondering if there's anything being done to more fully recognize this. I don't think it's fully recognized in some jurisdictions, and I'm getting concerns about this, and certainly I have a responsibility to bring the concerns of Pictou East to this House, and that is one of them.
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member opposite, we recognize that there are many students who are not university bound and should not be university bound. They have an interest and aptitude and a desire to work in the trades. And we have a responsibility to make sure that we provide some kind of support and training for them as they go through our public school system. To that end, the O2 Options and Opportunities initiative that is in our budget this year does begin to address that need, and we are doing it by a phase-in program. We are looking at 27 schools in the 2006-2007 school year, and that will continue to grow. We are looking at having, to begin with, there will be schools in each board, and we will be working with the parents and the students and the teachers to get feedback on those so we can take some direction as to what needs to be added or modified with respect to that program. But it is a good news program. It does address a need. It does provide support and direction and training for a population that otherwise we may not serve well. So I'm very pleased with that program, but we will be monitoring it very closely. And there are, as I said, there are 27 schools that have been selected across the province to give us a fair representation.
The honourable member for Pictou East.
Mr. Chair, to the Minister, is there a breakdown of the numbers to the Chignecto Central Board?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the minister, to the member, yes, there is, and I would be pleased to share that not only with respect to Chignecto Central, but perhaps I could share it with all boards because I'm sure all members are interested in what's happening in their particular board. And please remember that this is the beginning. These are the first 27. Next year we'll be adding more. Annapolis Valley, we have Horton, Kings, Central Kings, Northeast Kings, and Centre Middleton Regional Highs. Cape Breton Victoria Regional School Board, we have Breton Education Centre and Cabot High. In Chignecto Central, we have Oxford Regional, Hants North, South Colchester. In CSAP, we have Paramba, Cole, and Clare. In Halifax Regional, we have Sir John A., Sackville High, Queen Elizabeth, St. Pat's, J.L. Ilsley, Charles P. Allen, Lockview High, Auburn Drive. South Shore Regional, we have New Germany, Forest Heights, Liverpool. In the Strait, we have St. Mary's Academy, Cape Breton Highlands, Dr. John Hugh Gillis, and in the Tri-County, we have Digby Regional and Barrington Municipal. And so that is the beginning, but it's not the end.
The honourable member for Pictou East.
Mr. Chair, I want to commend the Minister for the expansion of this program, and I hope it is even expanded beyond the 27. But I'm pleased with some of the positive responses that I've gotten from this Minister, unlike some responses I've gotten in some other areas. One last question, if I could, and I have many more of them. There, as everyone knows, there is such a massive number of teachers that have retired because of the indexing. And those retirees have every right, they have every right to substitute. However, I want to make a statement, and this is nothing reflected at those retirees whatsoever, but we have a serious outmigration in Pictou County. It is the second highest outmigration of 18 to 24-year-olds and many other age categories. And my question is there any way of coming up with a blend of substitution that certainly includes the retirees, but also the recent graduates and also those who are subbing away, who are living away in other provinces and would really like to get home? So the question is, and this is not stepping on retirees whatsoever. I want to make that 100% clear. Is the department able to do anything to ensure that the ratio of substitution reflects a fair balance between retirees and others? And in saying that, the retirees in most cases, They're still relatively young, and all of them are very, very capable and certainly will make excellent substitutes. However, my question is there some way of reflecting a fair balance between the retirees and others?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, to the member opposite, as a retired teacher and the opportunity to substitute certainly didn't fit into my plan. However, there are many teachers who have many, many years of experience and who are willing and able to contribute back to the public school system. And in many cases, principals are encouraged and pleased to have substitute teachers return and do work in their schools. They're familiar with the school, they're familiar with the curriculum, they're just a great asset. So we will find that many teachers do come back and do substituting within the guidelines for their employment. However, we also recognize that our goal is to attract the young graduates and to employ the young graduates. We want our young people who are trained here as teachers to stay here and contribute to our public education system. One of the things that we do is the job fair and the early hire, which allows us to get out, allows boards to get out and have young graduates who will be graduating in that spring come to a job fair, and boards do what they call an early hire, in particular in areas where there are some concern for qualified teachers. That would be your high school math sciences and your French immersion kinds of teachers. And so boards can do early hires with these young graduates, and we're finding that many of them do take advantage of that because they do want to stay here. So our goal is to encourage those young people to stay. And if we have vacancies available, boards advertise those. They're on the internet, so they're cross-country, and that is intended to invite and encourage those who have gone away to come back home.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. 10 minutes really isn't enough time to deal with all of the problems and the issues and the concerns that I, as a member of this House, have drawn to my attention in education. I have a very limited period of time, so I'm going to focus on an issue that I'm hoping I can get some clarity from the Minister and the Department on that might help me deal with all of those other concerns that I have. And I want to start by telling the Minister, she's a new member, that prior to amalgamation of school boards here in Metro, the Halifax School Board had designated a number of small elementary schools within their board as inner city schools. There were 4 inner city schools. And of those 4 schools, 3 of them are in the constituency of Halifax Needham. And they're wonderful small schools. Joseph Howe, in particular, called after a former premier, is a very interesting small school, and it has had some graduates of distinction come out of that school, including George Eliot Clark. But kids that go to the inner city schools, and the reason these schools were designated as inner city schools were because quite often the kids came from single female-led households, very, very modest and low incomes, maybe low educational attainment on the part of their parents, African Nova Scotian learners who many themselves had come through maybe a segregated school system. So these children have they start off with many disadvantages in many respects, and they will continue to be disadvantaged unless school boards and the Department of Education take the necessary steps to provide the additional supports and resources to help these kids succeed. And they can succeed, and they must succeed, and if they don't, we all fail. Now, over the years, I have done my utmost to get from the board, the now amalgamated board, information on measurements, on outcomes for these schools. I've attempted to engage in a conversation around suspensions. I've attempted to find out more about the turnover among staff, principals and teaching staff, the placing of staff in those schools who come from African Nova Scotian backgrounds so that the children have good role models and people who will understand many of the challenges that people who have had to live in a society that has racism face. And I have to tell you, I and many people in my community are really concerned about the lack of information we get and the accountability that goes with in the provision of information. And as recently as 2 weeks ago, I attended a graduation at one of these schools where there's also a junior high. There were 5 kids on the stage. There were 11 kids in the grade 9 class. And, you know, we tried to make that event a positive event for those 5 children, but it was a challenge. And I go to all of the junior high graduations in my riding. I see such a quantitative and qualitative difference. And I'm basically at the end of my rope now. This is why I'm taking this here to you. I spoke with one of the senior administrators for the board, requesting an opportunity to sit down and talk about some of these concerns. And I was told that there is no protocol for a member of the legislature to meet with people who work in the school boards to have these discussions. Moreover, I was questioned about whether these concerns were my personal concerns or were they the concerns of families and people who reside in my constituency. You know, and I'm raising this issue because if that's the treatment I get from senior administration, bureaucrats, public servants, then can you imagine the response that parents without power and voice get? And I have these concerns brought to me regularly, and I've had enough. And I want to know what is the accountability mechanism from the government and the Department of Education for senior administration in school boards. And I believe the public have had enough. I've been a member of this chamber now for 8 years, and there are 3 things that consistently are brought up with me around education. And they are supplementary funding and the big fight between HRM and the board every year. They're about board accountability and not the elected members. I have an elected school board member, Ms. Kim Burkers, who is delightful to work with. And she has as much difficulty getting information as I do. And she's an elected member on that board. Go figure. So I want to know, what is the Department of Education's position with respect to board accountability, and what are these protocols that I've never heard about in terms of being able to sit down and have a conversation about concerns that an elected person has on behalf of their constituents and kids who live in their constituencies? Can you clarify for that for me, please, Minister?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the member opposite, I have to confess, I don't know what protocols you're talking about either, but I will commit to you that if there is a concern that you have and you've been denied access, we want to know about that. We believe in accountability. Parents should feel comfortable, and in most cases do feel comfortable, going in and speaking with their teachers or with the administration at the school. And I'm not sure of the particulars of the situation, but I certainly would welcome an opportunity to sit down with you and get the particulars. If there's an issue that you have as a representative from that particular area or those schools and that particular board, your first line of communication, as you know, would be at the school level. And if there's no satisfaction at that point, then you go up to the next level. If you're telling me that you've gone through those levels and with no satisfaction, then my door is open. I'd welcome an opportunity to sit down with you.
Honourable member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you very much, and I very much appreciate this because sometimes I can't even get a response at any level, you know, even a phone call. It would be, or a letter responded to, and I have now hit the boiling point, you know, when you really see problems that aren't being addressed in a school, and you just want to have a conversation about that, and it's unfortunate that it comes here. And I think in some ways one of my concerns is that, you know, sooner or later the high schools here in Metro are going to be amalgamated, and with a new school, a much larger school, there is a fear in parts of my constituency that young people coming out of a couple of our schools are going to be lost and sidelined, and that the foundational work isn't being laid to really look at what their needs are going to be and how they're going to be addressed in this new sort of super high school, big high school. Which brings me to the point I think that my colleague from Waverley Fall River was trying to make with respect to black learners when he was speaking about Principal or Vice Principal Wade Smith's public comments earlier in this year when he was talking about the need to explore, you know, any kind of alternative for black learners, including a school, an Afrocentric school. And I want to say, I know Mr. Smith. He is so respected, and he is so supported in the community that I represent as an individual and as an educator. He is somebody who cares deeply about all of his students. He teaches, I think he teaches English, and he teaches African Canadian, North American writers, and a Black Studies kind of English course. And I know that students, it doesn't make any difference what their background or their ethnicity, who take that course, they absolutely adore him and respect him. And I've been in the school system, so when he raises the flag that there's a problem, I pay attention, because so many people respect and know his work and know how dedicated he is. So I'm really concerned that we are able to get the attention of the department and of the Halifax Regional School Board to take seriously the concerns that come out of the inner city school community, the parents, the staff, and people like Vice Principal Smith, and actually address that. And I want to ask the minister, because I found her responses quite general. I wouldn't go so far as to say evasive, but they were very general in response to my colleague from Waverley Fall River. I mean, the concerns that Mr. Smith raised, I think, should have sent a flag up for the department that it can't be business as usual with respect to, you know, the provision of services. So following the concerns he raised, I want to know what initiative did the department take to sit down with Mr. Smith and with other people who have the expertise and the frontline contact and the knowledge of what the frustrations are, to really move forward with trying to address these things. What concrete steps are being planned to deal with the frustrations of Black educators and Black learners and their families and their communities? And what's being done to prepare for this new high school and the large numbers of students where the kids from the inner city are going to be a very small population, and we don't want them to be marginalized and sidelined in their education. They deserve far better than that.
The Honourable, the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the member opposite, I detect a number of questions in that. I'll try to answer some of them. I'll try not to be evasive or non-committal. With respect to the amalgamation of schools, whenever schools are consolidated from 2 or 3 smaller schools into a larger one, there is really an important step that has to take place long before the school students ever move to that new building. And I would anticipate, I would hope that that process has already started with respect to those schools that are going to amalgamate. And that process includes the school advisory councils, it includes the administration, it includes the teachers, it includes the parents, and very often activities for the students from both school bodies, if it's 2 or 3, where they can come together. And I know from experience in Chignecto Central that in Pictou County, we did take high school students from 5 schools and amalgamate them or consolidate them into 2. And there were fears in those communities, just like there are in yours, and there were diverse populations there that had to be accommodated. And the leadership on that particular initiative in that particular board was taken by the administrations in the schools that were being consolidated. But it was a very thought out and well-planned series of events that would take place so that that coming together of both the parent community and the school community and the teaching staff was as smooth and as easy as possible. I don't know if that's happened in this particular community, but I certainly can find out, and if it hasn't, we would be encouraging the board to make sure that they and their staff started that process. Because opening the door in September and having kids come together is not the way for them to be introduced one to another. So that particular concern is something that I think we can work toward. With respect to, and before I leave that, and that would include representation from any diverse group of learners who was there. And I would hope that that group is represented on the student council and on the school advisory council because they are important players. Students on the student council can often give excellent advice to teachers as to how that integration can take place. So I would hope that population is represented on both of those bodies. With respect to the initiatives in some of the inner city schools, within our budget we have looked at some specifics, literacy projects in 4 of those or 5 of those schools. I believe it would include, I'm not sure of the names, but I believe it would include the schools that you're referring to, and that's in our budget for this year. We're also looking at, wouldn't be at that particular level, but it would be for that population that identifying some skills and apprentice kind of opportunities for them as they get older, and also expanding the bursaries for students as they go through their university. So those are some of the things that are just in our budget this year, which we believe will begin to address some of the concerns that exist. And we're not dismissing the fact. We know the concerns are there, and we know we have a responsibility to try to address them. So those are some of the initial steps we're taking. With respect to a comment that you made in an earlier question, but I think it applies here as well, is the assessments, the scores, the data that comes from assessments that are done if it's elementary, it would be at the grade 3 and the grade 6 level. And that data is available at the school level, it's available at the board level, it's available at our department level, and it's public information. So the comparisons of that data gives you a pretty good picture of whether what's happening in the school is working or not. So I would, again, welcome the opportunity to review that data. That is probably the best way we have of determining, do we continue what we're doing or do we try something else? So the data is there to show the picture. Once we know what the picture is, we can look toward resources and services that will help those students. Yep.
The honourable member for Queens.
Thank you. I have two questions, and I'll begin with the first question, and then I'll wait for the response and then move on to my second question. I understand from the minister's comments yesterday that consultants will be available in the schools to promote and raise awareness for students around healthy lifestyles. And I think this is a very good thing, and certainly our young people are constantly being barraged with mixed messages about what healthy lifestyles actually look like. That being said, I'm hoping that the consultants that will be in the school system will be looking at the whole healthy lifestyle of individuals. You know, sometimes we tend to think of healthy lifestyles as being physical education and making healthy food choices when our students are in school and out of school, when they're making choices for their food at lunchtime. One of my concerns around the whole healthy lifestyle for students, many of our schools have a real serious problem with youth, especially in the junior high age group, where students are making bad healthy choices. We have some schools that are overriddled with drug use and also risky sexual behavior, which sometimes happens on the school grounds itself. And I recognize, and I'm not suggesting that this is an issue for the Department of Education. However, risky lifestyle choices that students are making while they're in the education system certainly does affect their ability to learn in a safe and healthy environment. So I guess my question is, the consultants going into the schools, what type of healthy lifestyle messages are they going to be delivering to our students? Will it be messages for the whole healthy awareness for students? And also, I'd like to know what the process is for contracting out these consultants. Will they be contracted through the Department of Education, or will these consultants come from consulting with the Department of Health? Once these consultants are in place, I'm asking just what types of time frames they'll be giving to the school system. Will they be part-time consultants coming in once a week, once a month? Will they be offering class time instruction for healthy lifestyles, or will they be courses that are available, or rather sessions that will be available to students if they so wish to participate? And also with that process too, what type of system is going to be in place to measure the outcomes of having consultants in the school system raising awareness around healthy lifestyle issues?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member opposite, I want to clarify in the beginning that the introduction of the consultants at each board, it's not a pilot, it's something that we have recognized a need, and so we are beginning the process. Pilots could have a short life, but this one we're not expecting it will have a short life. We recognize the need. I spoke yesterday about putting guidance people into schools at the elementary, grades 3 to 6, and boards will have flexibility, and we will direct to boards the flexibility that they have, so that if the need is at a junior high level, that there will be some flexibility. They can take some of those resources and some of those staff and put them in junior high. We believe we have a good system in place for guidance at the high school. We recognized that we needed something at the elementary, and we recognize that we need something at the junior high. So we're trying to close that gap between elementary and secondary. And junior high is a critical age for students, and they are making some decisions and choices, and unfortunately, some of them are not always the best choices. So we recognize that. With respect to the structure, there will be a provincial coordinator, and they will be working with the consultants, which we have allocated funds to each board to hire that consultant. The model that we're looking at is that the consultant would be working with the teachers at the board level. It would be perhaps not direct consultation between the consultant and the student, but rather the consultant working with teachers to give them strategies that they can use, because most of the learning in elementary and junior high in particular takes place on a daily basis between the student and the teacher. And it's not you go into a class for healthy lifestyles and then you go on to something else. It's integrated into the delivery of all of the subjects. So what does it include? It does include additional physical activity. It will be a focus on human sexuality, also on healthy foods and healthy lifestyles. And those are just 3 of the components of that, but it is to develop the whole child.
The honourable member for Queens.
Thank you. I'll move on to another subject area. In my community, we have a small rural school, Millville H Consolidated. It's a P-6 school environment. Millville H Consolidated has been on the chopping block for closure for the last 10 years or so. We have had several schools in the riding of Queens elementary schools close out over the last several years. The first time that the school was on the chopping block, when I was still had young children in the school system, I was one of the many parents who rallied around with the rest of the community and the teachers to advocate for our school to remain open. There is a strong community and a strong parent support group that still exists today, and we have been fighting consistently over the last several years to ensure that our school remains open. And like all schools, our school is the heart of our community. It is the first environment for our young children, our young learners. They experience for the first time away from home that welcoming environment, and certainly we look at our community school as being that welcoming environment. It's really comforting to know that our young students are so close to home. They get very much one-on-one instruction from teachers to students. Parents are very committed to raising funds for the school throughout the year to maintain some of the luxuries that the school and the children enjoy over the years. I'm asking the minister, what assurances can you give to small community schools such as Millville H Consolidated that you will support us in our endeavors to see that this school does remain open and does remain a heart of our community?
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member, the whole passion of small schools exists across the province, and what we need to do is to recognize what's in the best interest of students as far as their education and what's in the best interest of the communities when that whole issue is reviewed. As you know, there is a review that will begin in the fall, and I would encourage you and others in your community to take advantage of the opportunity to present before that review committee. As you will know, the whole business of school closures and studies that have been taking place in 3 of our boards have been put on hold until that review is completed. And I'm expecting a report from that committee early in 2007. It will be a short study, but it will be across the province, and it will provide opportunity for consultation and input. and I would encourage you, we want to hear from small communities during that process, and so that all of that input can be considered before any recommendations or changes to legislation might be considered.
The honourable member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to take the time that I have to talk about a couple of issues, one of which I think the Deputy Minister can guess. But I'll start with a question with regard to the new capital project construction schedule. It was in 2005 that the government had sent a letter to the Halifax Regional School Board, I assume all the school boards, asking for a list of school priorities. And I know there's been some betwixt and between, and I just want, if I can get on the record, when the minister expects to cabinet to review and when she will be announcing the next level of capital projects, school projects, particularly for the Halifax Regional School Board.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, to the member opposite, I've just been advised by my deputy that that list will be going to Cabinet in the fall.
The Honourable member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you. So I understand it is going to cabinet in the fall. When would we be expecting some form of announcement? In November, January? Just give me, I understand these are fluid numbers, but if I can get some sense of it, it would be appreciated.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member, the timeline for any kind of an announcement will depend on how much debate there is at Cabinet.
The Honourable member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
You know, the Minister of Education learns quickly. I suspect that the person next to her who has experience probably answering these questions in the past in one form or another has been very good at giving her advice. Mr. Chair, I do want to, for the record, make a point about the fact, and it's funny because you hear questions from other members about school closures and so on. I guess my community faces the alternative to that. It's 13,000 people, larger than Truro, larger than Amherst, larger than Glace Bay. In a couple of years, Mr. Chair, there are going to be 15,000 people in Eastern Passage. We have 600 students that are going to be going, or are currently bused out of the community. It'll be 750 students in a matter of 2 years, and yet we don't have a high school. And Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, this is an issue that particularly grates on the nerves of the people of Eastern Passage, Calbay and Shearwater. It is the largest community by far in Nova Scotia that does not have its own high school. We bus those students out. In fact, I would argue that with the cost of busing, Mr. Chair, that there would actually be money saved if you built a high school over the long period. So I do want to make the point before I sit down that I know there's a project the Halifax Regional School Board has presented to you, revised, has made that clear that they have presented, I think, a business plan that does result in a reasonable approach that by 2011 there would be a high school for the people of Eastern Passage. I think it's important that that be put on the record. Now, I want to turn to a separate issue, Mr. Chair, which is the issue of supplementary funding, which is the other issue that grates on the nerves of the people of Eastern Passage. And I know the minister coming from outside of Halifax may be new to the issue, but this is a very important issue because back in 1995, when we passed the Education Act, the province of Nova Scotia said it was okay for the city of Dartmouth, former city of Dartmouth, and the former city of Halifax to continue to impose this supplementary funding. But the former county can't do that. So what we've resulted in, I've seen in the school system, the fact that, let me step back a second, the fact that 10 years after amalgamation of the school board, we still talk about former county, former Dartmouth, former Halifax is a shame. And what we have as a result is a two-tier, if not a three-tier education system. We have a system in Halifax where they get sort of the Cadillac with the extra funding they collect. In Dartmouth, we have what I would consider probably the Buick, or the Oldsmobile, if they still make them, Mr. Chair. And then in the county, we've got the jalopy. And frankly, of all the places in Nova Scotia that are getting underfunded, it's the former county of Halifax in the Halifax Regional School Board. Over, I think the largest percentage of students in the Halifax Regional School Board live in the former county and the town of Bedford, and yet they are legally not allowed to provide supplementary funding because the province of Nova Scotia refuses to amend the legislation to reflect that challenge. And the problem is, Mr. Chair, that in the Halifax Regional School Board, former county, we get nothing. We get very few services, while if I drive across what is a fictitious border from the county into Dartmouth or into Halifax, they are getting a lot of services. And I would be remiss if I didn't stand in this House and put on the record, Mr. Chair, that as residents of Halifax Regional Municipality and students who attend Halifax Regional School Board schools, the former county students are being neglected. And I guess my question to the minister is, when is the province going to admit that the concept of supplementary funding for the former city of Halifax and the former city of Dartmouth, but not allowing it for the former Halifax County and the town of Bedford, is causing a schism in our education system that's resulted in the students in the former county and the town of Bedford not getting the same quality education as the students in the two cities?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chair, to the member opposite, my answer will probably be shorter than the question, partly because the supplementary funding is something I'm being brought up to speed on, but I do recognize that it is an arrangement, an agreement between the municipality and the school board, and we would welcome any kind of a proposal that would look at a more equitable distribution of supplementary funding across those three previous boards that have now become amalgamated.
Fall Harbour Eastern Passage.
Can the minister say for the record, can she admit for the record that the whole system was created? You can admit it was the former government, that's fine. I have no problem putting that on the record. But can you at least admit that this whole problem has been created and is still in place because there's a clause in the Municipal Government Act that results in this two-tier system?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Supplementary funding started.
Mr. Chair, to the member, again, another short answer. I recognize that there is a joint committee that's reviewing this, and I am not prepared to make any statement about why or why not that decision was made at the time of amalgamation, but I will make a statement that I'm not prepared to see an equitable distribution of funds to our students.
Honourable Member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Will the minister admit that it's that clause in the Municipal Government Act that is part of the problem?
Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chair, to the member, if the clause in the Municipal Act to which you reference does restrict the use of supplementary funding, then it does contribute to an inequitable distribution.
Honourable Member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Who's next? Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate with that answer. For the record, I will pass my time over to the member from Halifax Atlantic.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the opportunity to ask the Minister a couple of questions. I guess I'd like to preface it by saying that throughout this we keep on hearing about school communities and so on, and there's a great deal of fondness for small schools, local schools, and to the degree that a community represents common ground, that's often geography. But we also find a series of other things that need to be regarded in reference to that. And there are a series of communities in a school. One of those that I found myself involved with, somewhat inadvertently, was the day as a parent. I've had my own MSN moment. And I'm sure people can imagine what's involved with that. And I began realizing, as I spoke to other parents, as I queried whether or not it was true that everybody does, in fact, decide to go out at 11 o'clock at night and meet on a street corner, sort of just by some magic that happens in the air, but all members of a certain school community, or that they all decide to meet on a given playground. As I began querying, other parents and realizing that they weren't part of that everybody. They weren't informed. I realized that a couple of the communities that exist in the school are in fact virtual communities, and I'm wondering what the province has to say and intends to say at a broad policy level about the existence of what's sometimes referred to as electronic bullying. I have heard numerous stories of children who are in fact being harassed even from school computers in their homes or in their schools. So there's no denying there is a connection between the community and the school. What does the province see as the solution?
Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chair, to member opposite, I spoke earlier about the advantages to having technology in our schools, recognizing that that potential exists for the misuse of that technology, if we can call it that. The boards have been asked to put in place and enforce very closely and very rigidly an internet use policy, and all boards do have that in place, and it's monitored to the best of the board's and staff's ability. Is that good enough? Obviously, it's not catching all of the misuse of the internet, but we would be concerned about misuse in our schools, and what happens with respect to communication on the internet outside of our schools is very difficult and practically impossible for school boards to monitor. But activity that takes place in the school is what we have our policy structured and designed to address and to protect students from the misuse of that.
Honourable Member for Halifax Landing.
Well, thank you very much, and I do appreciate that it's a very difficult situation to monitor. I guess having had the experience of individual boards and individual schools in boards being asked to develop their own policies around issues which are sometimes quite uniform, I'm really wondering whether the province does not see that it has a role in designing a framework for acceptable internet use. And I'd also like to comment that although these things may be taking place partly outside of the school, they often have their root in the school.
Honourable Minister of Education.
I would repeat that boards do have their own policy. They are cognizant of the fact that there is misuse, and they are implementing that policy, as I said, as best they can under sometimes very difficult circumstances, because access to the technology can be under the desk or around the corner, and it's very difficult to monitor all of that. But there are certainly some outcomes and some repercussions for the misuse or the violation of that policy, misuse of the equipment or violation of the policy, and in fact it can lead to and has led to suspension and to charges under the with law enforcement. So it is an issue. It's something that we're aware of, and we're aware that it is increasing, and it may cause us to look at something more stringent within our school boards, allowing the technology to be used as it was intended, but stopping the misuse, and that's the dilemma.
Honourable Member for Halifax Landing.
Certainly do appreciate that. I'm not sure that necessarily more stringent needs to be the case, perhaps more structured, because I would suggest that probably the department is in a better position to offer at least a framework for acceptable use of technology, given that it is constantly changing and doesn't really vary from board to board. Moving from that, however, to another issue sort of surrounding communities, there's been a great deal of concern, of course, about the future of French immersion programming. And given that the federal government has, in the past, established that it has a goal of doubling the number of French-speaking graduates by the year 2013, that is only 7 years from now. I am just wondering what the province is doing in terms of funding to ensure that the graduates leaving the school are deemed competent in French are in fact doubled in number.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
in our English school.
Mr. Chair, to the member, the assessment for students who are going through the French immersion program and the competency of graduates, I believe, is the question. And we are developing, have not yet, but are in the process of developing an assessment that will be administered at the grade 9 level. That will be the beginning of our attempt to look at the outcomes and the success of graduates, success of our students at certain stages along the development and along their educational program. I've just been advised that development of that assessment is underway. I can't give you a date for implementation of that, but it is a beginning, and it will be the beginning of a number of assessments by the time students reach graduation.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Atlantic. Open seats. Close. Okay. Honourable Member for Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I probably only have a couple of minutes, and my honourable member from the Liberal Party is going to allow me to take a few minutes of his time. But I'll just want to get this one question out. Over the weekend, I had the opportunity to attend a community event in my community at my high school. And in talking to some of the people at the event at Prince Andrew High School, and with talking to some people that were organizing this event, they told me that they thought they had, and they were going to check on this and get back to me on Monday, but they haven't yet. So I want to ask this question. They thought that they had perhaps paid around $4,700 to rent that facility to put this event on, which would have been 2 nights and 2 days. And my understanding was in one of the previous sessions, there was a report that came out from your department that said that our schools were to be used as community schools and that they could only charge for, the heat, the lights, the janitors, and this sort of thing. And, maybe I'm wrong, but that sounds to me like an exorbitant amount of money. And if we're going to keep our schools, as schools that operate and allow community functions to go on, then, this is not a good thing. So I'm just wondering if you could comment on that. And of course, I realize this is short notice, and if you can get back to me on what really was charged for this event, I would really appreciate it. And if I am wrong, I will apologize to you and also to the people that gave me this information. But I thought this is a good time as any to find out, sort of what would be the average cost even of something like this occurring. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to the member opposite, perhaps we both need a little more detail on this one, but I know that our position is that there would be no charge for school-related activities for youth under the age of 19. But boards do have a fee structure that they use and that they charge for the use of their facilities. And you're right, it does cover things like janitors and so on, but I would need more detail on that one, and perhaps if you can provide that, it would provide the clarification that we both need. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the Minister again for the opportunity to question her. And listening to the debate over the last few days, I know the issue around school fees has come up, and I'm looking for a bit of clarification on what your department is, criteria is around the school fee, and particularly around band programs, and whether or not there's actually will be a fee for example, high school credit band program in Nova Scotia this coming September.
Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member, we did discuss school fees and indicated that curriculum-related activities should not be subject to a fee. You're speaking particularly, I think, about a band program, a high school credit band program, and that would be an elective, not a mandatory, not a compulsory program. So I believe I'm correct on that. And if a student wishes to enroll in that program and take that as a credit, and they do not have an instrument of their own, and they need to have one in order to participate, the option to rent that would be made available. But if they have their own instrument, there would be no charge for that. But if they don't have, there would be a rental fee, and that would be determined by the band auxiliary or the school or the board, or an outside supplier.
Honourable Member for Annapolis.
One of the problems in the constituency that I represent is that many of, or all of the equipment that is used by band programs, quite frankly, is raised, the money's raised to buy and purchase that from band associations. As I'm sure you're well aware, once that equipment arrives into the school, it no longer belongs to the band association. It belongs to the school board. So unless, is the school board going to have the ability to lease and rent that equipment back to those students? Or is there going to be some way through your department, a direction in your department, that the band associations will actually have ownership of that equipment?
Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member, I'm not aware of the agreement that you're speaking of that exists between your band auxiliary or your band association and the board. I'd certainly appreciate more information on that, but it sounds to me like what you're saying is the band auxiliary or the band association raises money, buys the equipment, and it becomes the property of the school board.
Mr. Chair, to the Minister, just for clarification to the Minister, I don't believe that is unique to my constituency. That is a policy that is, to my understanding, that is provincial-wide. The band association cannot own that equipment inside that school. Once it becomes part of the program in the school, it is owned by the school board or the department. The issue is, will the board have the ability to be able to rent that equipment back? Or will the board have the ability to actually offload that and leave it in the proper hands, which would be the Band Parents Association?
Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member, I need to get more familiar with that policy because, frankly, I'm not sure I like what I hear. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank the Minister. I look forward to hearing about that as I do about the rollout of the charter letter surrounding the high school. Another issue that has come up in my constituency is around a couple of the high schools. Bridgetown Regional High School, AWAC, Annapolis West Education Center, has a low number of, the student enrollment is declining. And because of that, when you plug in the formula that the Department of Ed has for the teacher allocation, it's becoming virtually impossible for those schools to begin to offer the credits that you require for them to graduate. The Annapolis Valley Regional School Board, to their credit, has provided 2 extra teachers for this coming year to Bridgetown and Annapolis West Education Center. What I'm wondering from your department, is there any initiative to bring forward to ensure that the rural high schools that are suffering declining enrollment will be able to continue to operate and provide the course level that your department is requiring?
Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member, I know that one step that we have taken with respect to additional financial support to small rural high schools, is targeted for schools that are under 100 students, and we have some of those around our province. That is the first step. We also recognize that in some of our high schools, we are able to provide online courses which allows students to pick up on that course without having to have the qualified teacher delivering that program to them. Are we prepared to look at other ways to support small high schools? We would be prepared to look at that, but at this point, our funding allocation is for schools that are rural schools of 100 students or less.
Honourable Member for Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my understanding, and I believe it is the mandate of your department, is to ensure that all Nova Scotia children get the same access to a quality education. By using the cutoff of under 100 students, really doesn't take into account the very fact of the pressure that's being provided on schools of 350 to 400 students, because trying to meet the credit load that your department is putting on them, that's saying that students who graduate need X number of credits. They have the inability to provide those credits right now under the teacher-student ratio formula that your department is putting out. To say to students, you can take a course online is, in my view, is an admission of failure and an admission of showing the problem with that particular formula. I have students in my constituency who are actually leaving those schools, going to other schools, because they are providing them with the options that you are telling them they need, and they feel that they need in order to move forward as they leave high school and go into university. So I want you to be able to say to the people of Annapolis County that their children are getting the same quality of education as they are in Kings, as they are in Truro, and anywhere else in this province. And under the present formula, if you continue to allow the teacher-student ratio to fund the staffing issue, you cannot say that. And to use the cutoff as 100 is unfair, unfair, unfair to many of those schools, and in particular, it's unfair to those students. So I'm wanting to know when we can expect that formula that number to be moved up from 100 to be more sensible.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member opposite, it's my understanding that when the boards did meet with the department to look at how best support could be provided to those small rural schools, that there was an agreement between and among the participants that the first step would be to look at schools with 100 students or less. And that was an agreement on the part of the boards together with the department. And I said that was a first step. We would certainly be interested in hearing from your board if there are challenges that they face as far as delivery of our curriculum to their schools, and look at possible solutions for that, and would welcome an opportunity to hear from them in that regard.
The Honourable Member for Annapolis.
Was it an agreement with the boards, or was it flat out to the boards, here it is, take it or leave it? If you want to know how your teacher-student ratio is impacting on the real people who it is affecting, that be the students, you should be reaching out and asking those high school students who are being denied credits because of the staffing situation, and the staffing formula that you're putting out does not allow their high school to offer them that credit. And I say to you again, you are forcing kids to leave Annapolis County, quite frankly, to go to other counties to get an education, because the schools do not offer that. And saying to them you can do it online is a complete admission to the failure of that formula. And I want to be able to leave here to say to those students, what is their option without having to leave home?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member, first part of your question had to do with how that agreement or decision was made. I understand it was there was a period of consultation in response to the recommendations from the Hogg report. It was that part of the consultation that took place, and boards did agree that that would be a starting point for the supplementary additional funding for small high schools. With respect to the question about delivery of courses, it only stands to reason that when you have a critical mass, you do have more opportunity to provide more options for your students. And the numbers of students in a school certainly helps determine the courses that can be offered and the staff that can be provided to deliver them. We give our funding to school boards based on student population, and as I said, would welcome an opportunity to talk with your board in particular if that funding appears to be inadequate for some of your schools.
Member for Annapolis.
And I just want to do a follow-up on the response that the minister just said. So I believe what you said was, in larger high schools, you can offer them a better curriculum than you can in other high schools. So in other words, you're saying from the large high schools, students that are going to that are getting a better quality education, better variety than they are in other parts of Nova Scotia. Is that fair? Is that what the intent of the Department of Education is, to provide an equal access to education, provide a quality of education across the province, to say that larger high schools are going to have a better quality than a smaller one?
Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member, I don't believe I said anything about the quality of education. I did talk about the number of courses, the number of options that could be provided. That's absolutely no reflection on the quality of education. We recognize that some of our smaller schools, some of our smaller high schools do and will continue to deliver quality education.
Annapolis.
Sure, I would say to you that if students in smaller high schools are not getting the access to the actual courses that your department is telling them they need, that would not be quality. That's how they would judge it, is when they leave high school, they have the same option as any other student in Nova Scotia when they go on to university, that their ability will allow them to go. Your department, by saying that if you're going to go to a small high school, you will not have access to the same advantages as someone going to a larger high school, is quite frankly an admission to that. And I don't see how you can separate the two. Mr. Chair, I don't expect a response to that, but I would like to allow the member from Dartmouth, South Portland Valley on an introduction, and then I'll continue with the remainder of my questions.
Member from Durham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Peter Stauffer, Member of Parliament for Sackville Eastern Shore and our West Gallery, and to thank him on behalf of the legislature for bringing along the Canada Remember pins, and each MLA will have one at their desk. And so welcome very much, and I ask everyone to join me in thanking Mr. Stauffer.
Honourable Member for Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the Minister, the school board that we're talking about is actually the lowest funded school board in the province of Nova Scotia. One of the issues that, one of the things that in my constituency we're quite proud of is the Annapolis East Elementary School. It was one of those schools who's developed a program, particularly around autism, which is known not only around this province but around the country. And when many people move in, as people are transferred into CFB Greenwood, who move into the valley, they try to live in the location of that school because their children need that extra support. They want them to have access to that quality program that is at Annapolis East Elementary School. And part of that is one of the reasons why our board also has a high level of children with special needs. The issue is, though, is funding, and the funding that follows that to provide that course level. And I'm wondering if you could address that issue with me today.
Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member opposite, my understanding is, based on the information from staff, is that the board in question operated with a surplus last year. That would suggest to me that at the discretion of the board, there were areas that they could have targeted those funds.
For Annapolis.
That, they may be operating at a surplus under the direction of your department, under the guidelines of your department, under the rules set forward by your department. That may be the issue. That may, quite frankly, solve the teacher-student ratio in Bridgetown Regional High School, if that's what you're suggesting. It may also allow them. It may also allow them to deal with the special needs. Is it your department, quite frankly, that sets out the student-teacher ratio, or do you send money to the Annapolis District School Board and allow them to divvy it up as they wish?
Minister of Education.
$5.4 million, the increase.
Mr. Chairman, to the member, it's my understanding that the funds are allocated to the board, and the board uses those funds to provide the staffing to deliver the programs in question.
For Annapolis.
Mr. Chair, I may be wrong on this issue, but I believe the minister knows there's a formula that comes out of their department around staffing issues. Now, unless every other school in my district is completely wrong, there's a formula, which could be.
Honorable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member, it's my understanding that it is a funding formula that determines the amount of money that goes to the board. It is not a staffing formula.
Honorable Member for Annapolis.
So my question then is, in the end, so once you allocate X number of dollars, the board can do it with it as they wish.
Honorable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member, the boards have flexibility within their budget to cover the costs related to delivering the curriculum and operating their schools. Yes, they do.
Honorable Member for Annapolis.
Could you explain to me what you mean by flexibility?
Honorable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member, my definition of flexibility there would be recognizing that there are certain needs and special needs in some areas of their board, some schools in particular, and it may be a small school, that the flexibility that they have is to direct some additional funding, and that could be in the form of staffing, to some of those schools.
Honorable Member for Annapolis.
So if the Annapolis District School Board operated in a surplus, was that surplus returned to you?
Honorable Minister of Education.
The surplus is not returned to the department.
Honorable Member for Annapolis.
So in the ensuing fiscal year, how is the budget set by the funding that was used the previous year, or set by the budget of the previous year?
Honorable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chair, to the member, the surplus is not returned to the department, and it is not deducted from their next year's budget.
Honorable Member for Annapolis.
But, and I appreciate that, but is the next year's budget based on the previous year's budget, or is it on the previous year's expenditures?
Honorable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chair, to the member, their having a surplus does not affect the application of the funding formula for the next year.
Honorable Member for Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be sharing the rest of my time with Member Kings West, and I look forward to my next meeting with the Annapolis District School Board to just perhaps see their side of the story. So I want to thank the Minister for the opportunity over the last few days to ask questions around education concerning the people of Annapolis.
Honorable Member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and pleased to probably finish out to the remaining time, unless a colleague comes along with a pressing question. But I would like to just start off today sort of what I call kind of a leisurely fashion. With the minister's background in education, I know just appointed to the ministry a short time ago, but I'm sure with that background, I'm wondering what are a couple of areas that you in particular, let's put aside the background of the Department of Education and in this case, an educator in the deputy role. What would be a couple of areas that you would hope to have an impact on changing or improving some of the directions where we currently have? I think and I'll point to one area where we have a huge deficiency in our school system, and it may be one that you will actually identify. But I'd just like to know a couple of areas that over the next while we can all sort of monitor that there is some steps being taken in those directions.
Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member opposite, I would certainly want the outcome of my time in the minister's office to be one that I can be proud of, and I've always been motivated by doing what I believe is best for kids. That's what has motivated me as a teacher and as a principal and in every other position that I've held. That will not change while I'm in this position. Your beliefs do not change just simply because you take on a new responsibility. So I will be motivated by what's best for kids. And to me, that translates into us being able to provide the supports we need to our teachers to deliver quality program and to our students to ensure that they are able to learn to the best of their ability in the environments that we provide. All of that, of course, has to be prefaced by resources that we have at our disposal to make that happen. But what I want out of all of this is that we have a good educational program so that kids can be successful at whatever level based on their ability, and that they can become good citizens that are able to leave this public education system that we have. And I personally and the department can be proud of the outcomes that they're able to achieve.
Honourable Member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Minister, for a fairly general, sort of, I guess, a bit of a motherhood type of statement about education, but I do appreciate it nevertheless. I'm wondering then, because I'm going to go to an area that I certainly, as a teacher, as a vice principal, as an education critic, as one that got around the province a fair bit, would identify as a huge deficit in our school system. While some progress is being made, there's no question, but special education. And I would like for you to give me your definition of special education, because as minister, that is truly going to frame where the department could be going over the next 2 or 3 years.
Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member, when I talked about providing education to all students to the best of our ability and so that they could learn up to their potential, I'm referring to the broad range of learning abilities in our schools. And one of the areas that we quite often neglect are the students at the upper end of the scale. You can call them gifted, you can call them whatever you want, but they are students who are able to exceed above and beyond and who need to be challenged in their programs. And I would want to make sure that we don't lose sight of programs that are designed to provide those students with those enrichment and challenging opportunities. So they are all part, in my opinion, of a special education program. I think the special education program, as I said, applies to all abilities across the board. I know that in our budget for this year, we have looked at providing supports, whether it's guidance, whether it's resource teachers, a number of initiatives that we believe will allow those students, whatever the ability, to perform and to excel.
For Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Certainly that gives, somewhat of a framework, I guess, for for the gamut of special education. I'm thinking here, though, more in particular around children, around our students who have gone through the educational assessments and have been identified with a very specific learning disability. And there are a whole number of them. But, you know, if we take dyslexia or ADD or ADHD, if we take those specific learning disabilities, there is no question today that in most of our schools, we do not have a specialist who can take that child from A to Z in terms of the learning strategies, in terms of the kind of change that will need to go on. There are some remnants of fully trained special ed teachers in our system. There are a few remaining that are in our resource departments. But many of our resource teachers, they will tell you, I can only give minimal support to this child. They have an identified learning disability, and only a specialized program with that kind of expertise, like we find at Landmark or at Bridgeway Academy or at Churchill, will help them actually overcome and achieve the level of success. Because I feel very strongly, again, just a few years from having been on the ground with students, we have a problem in Nova Scotia with our withdrawal rate. You know, that's a nice term from the Department of Education, but kids who quit school because their identified learning problem, learning disability, is not able to be addressed. And I am wondering, in terms over the next number of years, whether we're prepared to put specialists back in our schools who can help those children. Or at the very least, and my suggestion actually would be that in each of the boards across the province, we would have something comparable to a Churchill Academy or to a Bridgeway, so that the children in Cape Breton, who now certainly you may get 1 or 2 a year who will come from Cape Breton to Landmark East. Otherwise, their dyslexia problem, their ADD, etc., will not be addressed because it's not being addressed right now. I'd like for the minister to comment on some directional pieces as to where the department wants to make that kind of improvement, because I feel without question that if we lose 1,000 students at the grade 10 level, and based on the last statistical yearbook that I got from the department, over 1,000 students, grade 10, over 1,000, grade 11, a little bit less in grade 12, those are unacceptable numbers. And I think some of it is around the fact that we are not meeting needs. We're not meeting needs on the special education side, and to some extent as well on the program side.
Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the member opposite. I mentioned earlier that we have about 20% of our students in our schools who do receive supports in a variety of forms, and those supports are to help them achieve the outcomes that we have designed for that particular grade level. And we also have, in this budget, added some things that we believe will enhance that. We're looking at increasing the number of educational assistants. We're looking at increasing the number of supports in the guidance area, in particular at the elementary. We're also looking at, we have a staff of itinerant teachers who do provide supports, be it speech language, school psychologist, and we take advantage of their expertise and allow them to work with teachers who don't have specific training in those areas, but who do need to have some strategies at their disposal. Because of the inclusion policy, we have those students in our classes, and our teachers need to be trained and well-versed in strategies to deal with those students. And so it's, it's an ongoing and it's evolving. We've moved away from special schools for special education students, and we've gone to the inclusion policy. But we recognize that there are times and there are students that cannot necessarily always be included. And so we have provisions in our schools for those students to get direct service and support, usually on a one-on-one. And sometimes it's a pull-out for a period of their instructional day, and other times it is perhaps in a separate learning environment. So we're doing a lot of things. Is it enough? I guess the fact that we've included things in this budget to address that should suggest that no, we're not happy with the things the way they are now. We've identified some areas that need more support, and we will continue to do that. And I would see that evolving based on input that we get from our teachers and from our parents as to are we meeting the needs of those students? And if we are not, what can we continue to do, or what can we change to help do that?
Honourable member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Madam Minister, certainly, I certainly think that it is a huge problem for our education system, and it's one that I'll continue certainly to drill down on, and one that I will continue to raise in this House, because certainly I'm a pretty strong proponent of the inclusionary model for our system, but certainly it seems that more and more of our students don't get that specialized help, and especially in certain parts of the province where there are no such programs available, that a very, very good program that this government brought in under the former minister, and that was the tuition agreements. There's no question that the tuition agreements have allowed some children from families that would have never been able to go to Bridgeway or Churchill. Landmark is still pretty distant for some of our children. Even for a day student, we're in the $20,000 range. So the tuition agreement doesn't quite make it for some children. So it's still an area that does need, I think, a considerable amount of work, and I feel that something at the regional level that each board can offer, just like right now in AVRSB, we have 2 alternate schools, and there's no question the alternate school is proving to be a very, very successful model. And I'm just wondering, is this now across the province? And is it one that we're likely to see more resources directed towards in the coming years?
Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member opposite, one of the supports that I didn't mention this time, but I had earlier, was the tuition support, and recognizing that the environment in those particular schools is one that we cannot create in our public school system, but we recognize that it is an environment where some students do learn best. And so we are prepared, as I've said earlier, to extend that 2-year to 3, and during that 3rd year, for students who need that 3rd year, the consultation to see what other supports we can best provide. But at this point in our budget and in our program plan, those schools are beyond our means fiscally.
Member for Kings West.
Around this theme and area of having programs that do meet student needs, certainly, the Memorial High School concept, the composite high school, is one that certainly the new Premier has touted as being one that's a model that perhaps we should see an expansion of. And I'm wondering, during this government's mandate, will we see the announcement of such a school or the conversion of an existing high school, and at least maybe one of these in each of the boards across the province?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member, your reference to the composite high school and also to the Premier's comments and commitment, I think we have recognized that we will be beginning that extension of that by looking at one site in each board. That is a beginning. We're also looking at the O2 opportunities, and I think that's 27 sites across the province. So we do recognize that there's a need to take some of that programming and extend it beyond to make it more accessible to more of our students in more of our boards. So those are a couple of what we believe are positive steps towards that goal.
Or Kings West.
Mr. Chair. And Madam Minister, it sounds to me like you endorse the idea, but the plans aren't quite on the paper yet. So we'll have to watch that one and see where it goes in the next bit. Along that area of our dropout rate and the withdrawal rate, I'm wondering if you ever take a close scrutiny at a particular board or area as to why there may be that anomaly or that significant percentage of students in a board that will drop out. For example, in AVRSB, at the grade 9 level, we see a withdrawal or a dropout rate of between 4 and 5%. And I'm wondering if the department actually ever takes a look to see whether or not that's due to perhaps the structural arrangement, whether or not the middle school or the junior high or the grade 9 attached to a senior high, because it is significantly above other boards in the province. And I'm just wondering if there is something that can be identified which in fact will assist the board to address that. Because at that grade 9 level, that to me is that's the student that we're trying to now help with adult high school, and I'm wondering if there's ever anything done by the department to do an analysis and find reasons for that.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member opposite, the statistics that are available from the boards are passed on to the department. We ask boards to review those and see what kind of a message may come to them, whether it is dropout rate or whether it is success rates with certain outcomes. But data is only as good as the time you give to analyze it and then to use it for future planning. One of the things that we have in place now that we're a system where we can collect that data and it can come in electronically. And one of the things that we'll be doing in that tracking model is for our department to be getting that data more readily and have staff at our department also doing an assessment and an evaluation, because it should be used to determine future direction and future investments, both from the department's level and from the board. So we recognize that data is important. The figures you're talking about, the 4 to 5%, those are not statistics that we want to see repeated. So we're hoping that the tracking will allow us to get a handle on what's happening and how we can address it.
Honourable Member for Kings West.
Another area that I'd like to now go to is teacher education. And I hear by the fly on the wall that perhaps the Deputy Minister is actually quite keen on this, and that is having a review of teacher education with the possibility that Nova Scotia may move to where other provinces already are, and that is a one-year program. Just wondering if there is a possibility of a review, if there is any kind of intention at the moment of moving that way.
Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member opposite, if I could bring a little personal contact here. I do have special interest in teacher training and the quality of teachers that we have across our province and the variety of training institutions from which they have come. We recognize that at this point in time we have 4 universities that provide teacher training opportunities, but we are in consultation with universities and we are continuing to do a review of that. Do we have enough seats? How much time is it taking for young people to get trained as teachers? What are the qualifications? What's the quality of their training program? And what we can best do to make sure that we have the best trained people trained in Nova Scotia to be teachers in our schools. So that whole business of teacher training is certainly one that I will be leading as far as a review.
Honourable Member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and through to Madam Minister. I think Nova Scotia and perhaps other provinces are in a similar situation, but I think we have a great opportunity here over the next 8 to 10 years, 8 to 10 year period, to capitalize on perhaps the greatest resource for strong teacher training, and that is with the existing teacher complement that we have in the province. As you have alluded to the fact, and I would concur that overall we do have an outstanding teaching force. However, when we take a look at the fact that 45%, it's either 45, 46%, and I just did the statistics on this yesterday, are between the ages of 45 and 55. So we have 45% of our teaching force. What a great time to have a one-year program in our 4 universities for teacher training and a year of internship. I think the year of internship can certainly, in my view, gain from that tremendous resource that we already have in our schools. We also know that some schools last year ran into difficulties with substitute teachers. There was quite a number of reports last year that a principal or a vice principal had to spend a day in a classroom when there wasn't somebody available. What a wonderful opportunity with an internship to have somebody in the school, in fact, who would be getting that kind of training. I'm wondering if at this stage if the Nova Scotia Teachers Union, Department of Education, would be positive towards that kind of concept of 1 year at university and a year of internship.
Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the member opposite. That option that you just shared may well be one of the outcomes of the review. It would be premature for me to suggest what the outcome might be, but I'm sure that will be something that will be on the table at that time and during those discussions. But if I could just speak a little bit to the substitute issue, and we know that school boards have experienced some difficulty with the availability of substitutes, and we know that parents have often been concerned about the number of substitutes that are in their child's classroom during the course of a year. We've not taken that lightly. We've listened to what parents have been saying about that interruption, and we've listened to what principals have been saying, and we've also listened to what teachers have been saying about the amount of time that they may have to be out of their classroom, not due to illness, but due to other requests, and that could be, and sometimes is, requests from this department to have teachers who work on curriculum development or some things like that. And so we're taking a real hard look at that, because the fewer interruptions we have for those students by introducing substitutes into the class, the more consistent that flow of delivery is. So we're looking at that as well. And it would also help to, again, putting students first, make sure that there was consistent delivery and the relationship they have with their teacher is not interrupted unnecessarily, and also help address the concerns that boards have about so many substitutes being needed, perhaps on a daily basis. So, so the whole issue of teacher training and how students get that educational program, whether it is the 1 year of university and another year of practicum, those are, as I said, options that we are looking at and may well be part of the discussion and the outcome of the review.
The Honourable Member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Madam Minister, just a couple of other areas to touch upon before I finish up. One that my colleague from Annapolis raised yesterday was in regards to the Nova Scotia Community College campus in Middleton. And one of the things that we have seen in that campus is certainly a decline in students, and obviously if you shift programs out of the school, then there's no question we're going to have less enrollment. While it's good to go to that school and see that some of the physical space is being used for research, and certainly it's difficult to disagree with that initiative. But at the same time, we're in an area where the basic trades are in a huge deficit in terms of the numbers currently needed. During the past year, I had a meeting with the principal of the school, Mr. Stanley, as well as we brought in a number of companies that talked about this very fact. And we, in this area, they've identified, of course, the basic trades of electrical, plumbing, carpentry as being the most currently in need of. And I'm just wondering if there is a commitment, if there is a plan. We only have 18% of our post-secondary students who go to community college. And I know that's an area that, as a province, we all want to see, increase. We want to see a more balance towards the national average, so that we can have a good complement of skilled people in the whole wide range of basic trades, up to the ones requiring more education and of a higher technical nature. When we see what's happened in Middleton, right away we start to think about what of its future. And there's no question that if we put programs there, such as, for example, training the therapists for the ABA or the EIBI autism program, there's no question that if you have a quality program, students will come. There are places to stay in this community and in neighboring communities. Take, for example, the Nova Scotia Community College campus site in Lawrencetown, or what I certainly would like to see renamed College of Geographic Sciences. And I may have to work on that one a little bit. But anyway, there's no question they come internationally to that institute. There's nothing in Lawrencetown to attract people there, but the college itself. Outstanding programs. The same thing can be said about Middleton. If we put 2, 3, or 4 high requirement quality programs in place, we'll definitely see the students come back. Is there a plan to revive the Middleton campus of the Nova Scotia Community College?
The Honourable Minister of Education firstly would like to do an introduction and then move to answer the question. Agreed.
If I could, and then I will answer the question. I'd like to draw your attention to some folks we have in our gallery here today, just joined us. They are from the DAL Explorer program, which is an English immersion program. These are students from Quebec, and they're here visiting us. We welcome you to the legislature and hope that your stay here and in Nova Scotia is enjoyable. Welcome. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to the member opposite. I spoke earlier about the O2 program, and that's, there will be O2 program students in 27 of our schools this year. And one of the ways that it meets a need, because as you've identified, the skilled labor, the void that's there, and we need to have people trained in those skills so they can take over as the other generation is retiring. And so we're meeting that need by providing opportunities for that for those students to be trained, but we're also helping with the Nova Scotia Community College situation, because a completion of that O2 program guarantees those students a seat at the Nova Scotia Community College. So we recognize the importance of community colleges, the capacity that they have, and we now have a mechanism to feed into them a population that will help rebuild. And I appreciate your concerns about how important that facility is in those communities, and we see this as one step to help, as I said, recruit and rebuild and increase the population of those students there. So I look forward to how that will translate into your particular areas, but that is something really positive that we see coming out of that O2 initiative.
The honourable member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just with the remaining time, I'll take a look at a few questions around the student loan program. And currently our government has a contract with RBC to be the primary lender, and of course the province is the guarantor. Is that correct, Minister? And also, as my understanding, this contract will be up as of this year. Will this government be renegotiating that contract with RBC, and will we be going towards a different lender? Will the Nova Scotia government and the Department of Education become the primary lender?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
We're going to be borrowing the money ourselves.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, to the member opposite, your facts are correct that we do have a contract with RBC. We will be extending that contract, but we'll also be looking, and RBC are aware of this, we will be looking at what has been suggested by members around the House as a good move for students, and that is a direct lend program. And what we see that doing for students is that a direct lend should provide them with a lower interest rate, which will help them in the cumulative debt for their student loans.
The honourable member for Kings West.
Just, I guess, with the remaining time, I'll just have to skip along here. The graduate tax credit that the government is announcing, will they go against existing loans, or will the money be reflected as collectible dollar amounts in their income tax?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member opposite, it's my understanding that the graduate tax credit is a credit for those students when they complete their income tax at the end of the tax year.
The Honourable member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to Madam Minister. Regarding the parental contribution amount attributed to the student loan funding formula, how much more can a parental income be so that a student can receive more money under the program? And also, the budget address stated that it was a decrease by 25%. What exactly in terms of dollar amounts and income levels for parents and students in this province?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to the member opposite, I guess the Coles Notes version here would be that by increasing the parental income level, more students would be eligible to apply for student loans, and therefore more students could benefit from that option.
The honourable member for Kings West.
I'm wondering, Madam Minister, however, in terms of dollar amounts, income levels, what will those be established at? I think that's what parents are concerned about. 1 year ago, when I visited most of the campuses in the province, this was one of the concerns raised by students, is that certainly by year 3 and 4, there was an